Right, so could you tell me who you are and what you're doing, and give us sort of your background from where you've come from and how you're doing what you do now?
Right, so that's a lot of questions all at once. Okay, so my name's Alan Beck, and I'm the founder of The Wib and Reality Check Consultancy. Born in Scotland, in Glasgow. Never really fitted in, I don't think. That's my story. I didn't fit into education, didn't fit into family, anything much. Because I kept seeing things differently. Nobody, I think, family and friends and so on, they didn't really get me, no, understand where I was coming from. They very kindly put up with me, as so many people have. But I find myself here today, um, trying to get the whip into the world.
And could you tell me how you create stories and tell stories through the web? Really, like, can you give a more like a background behind the web and the meanings behind it? Really.
Yeah. The whip, the whip is about communicating symbolically. So it's about numbers 1 to 10, and those numbers represent how much energy the badge wearer has. It's not so you don't have to be ill to wear a wib. It's just about where your energy is and letting people know where you are so that they can know how to interact with you. So I guess the bigger picture around the wib is it's about the ecology of human interaction.
And how powerful do you feel projects like yours, like the web, and like other businesses, can be to tell stories? Do you think the web has a really powerful story behind it? And how do you feel that story is effective?
Okay. I like it because you ask loads of questions. Never know which one to answer. The, I think I think that the best stories are simple, and therefore the wib is special in the sense that it's really really simple. We're going to talk to each other in numbers, and those numbers have symbols which cause people to have feelings and emotions, and they allow people to connect with each other without really going into great long descriptions. So I think that is fundamentally a good story.
And do you think projects like yours are more powerful than, say, filmmaking or another type of art form?
I think everything is a story, and everyone has many stories to tell. Obviously, artists, filmmakers, musicians, inventors uh, reach deep down into their psyches and somehow communicate novel ideas or new ways of thinking. So everybody has a story, everybody's creative, everybody has a story to tell.
And how do you think people personally respond to your ideas, especially the web? How do you think people respond to sort of the idea of it?
Yeah, how people respond is the best bit, absolutely, because most people just love it. They just think it's a beautiful object. They think it's a great idea. They come to me telling me how what numbers they are and what those numbers mean, and I've done nothing to create that. So just the fact that they're so enthusiastic and they can connect and understand it without me explaining it is beautiful.
And do you think people see the same things as you see in the web, or do you think it's completely different?
I The whole point of the web and self-regulation, because by turning this disk, turning this number around, that self-regulation, you're saying I'm going to communicate a different mood, a different feeling. Just by saying that, you're creating your own story. Everybody is different, and I think that's what the badge would celebrate in a group of people. They would all be different. Even if they're the same number, those numbers would mean different things for different reasons, and I think that's beautiful too.
And how can others do similar thing to you? So sort of come up with their own projects and sort of put it out there and make it a thing. How can people do the same?
Uh, how can people get their stories out? How can people create their stories? That's a really good question, and I almost want to say I don't know, because this whip came out of a dream. So as far as I was aware, there was no conscious effort, no decision making. I saw it, I was shown it with absolute clarity, and I just felt compelled to get on and do it. And this is somebody who was chronically ill at the time. So I think if you have those conditions, that you're just compelled to do something without much reason, then that's a great story, and that's how you do it. But everybody's got to do it their own way.
And can you give a bit of background of how the web started? So you said it came from a dream, but could you give a bit of how it sort of became an actual thing? So how it's been designed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And where it is now, really.
Yeah. So, having been chronically ill for 4 years, so often bedridden, but certainly housebound, um, the need to communicate was difficult. I couldn't construct sentences. I couldn't speak for very, very long without becoming really, really tired. So the WIB came about from that, from the dream. I was shown a way of communicating easily via numbers and symbols. And I had the image in my head, and I got hold of a prototype maker, and he just followed those instructions and made this first version. Since then, now I've got a digital badge that's about to be trialed. I've got some opportunities with the GP with about 24 people who suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome. So we're going through a process there of just testing the market, seeing whether this is something. I mean, I believe it works. It seems to work, and people seem to see how it works and would work for them. But actually putting it in a trial is really exciting, and being able to find out what other people think and what they make of it. So that's the next stage of the journey.
And do you think each type of project or business like yours, do you think they all have a different story and a different meaning behind them?
Yeah. Yes, they do. How can I answer that in a bit more intelligently? So what's behind the question? Do I just ask a question again?
So how do you think different types of businesses and projects have different stories behind them, and do you think, and how is each of them different really? How do they have their own story?
Okay.
And sort of how do you think yours is different than compared to other projects that are about?
I think the story of the web has just come out of circumstance, or it was a situation based concept and idea that's gone beyond myself and my own needs. So that's quite an interesting story. There's something different about that. So through, if you like, the misfortune of my situation, something really good, I believe, has happened, and it can help many people. So that, there's a really interesting story. For other people, I think our situations and our experiences are unique, and therefore all stories will have a unique aspect to it, which makes it special.
And is there any certain emotions or feelings that you personally try to come out through the web, or not really?
Um, well, the, the web, uh, being chronically ill is highly emotional. We're talking about a spectrum of emotions here. I mean, being continually in pain is really depressing, and not being able to communicate is isolating. So there's a whole range of what we could say are negative emotions. It just so happened I found them interesting for myself, and there was a deep part of me that remained positive, even though I was in a really difficult situation. And that I don't know why that is. It must just be inherent. I just must have been born with this optimism. But the combination of being a positive optimist and actually being really quite miserable simultaneously. Yes, I mean the Wib's highly emotional, and you can score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on how you're feeling emotionally, mentally, and physically. So the badge is asking you to communicate your emotions. Absolutely, I am pissed off. I'm a 9 today. I'm full of beans, so I'm incredibly, happy. So yeah, this is a monitor displaying your emotional states, very emotional. And I think if we're listening carefully to people's stories, then there's an emotional thread there that's driving their behavior and driving our responses.
And from that, do you think, from where you've been, do you think the web sort of made you happy and it's made it easier to be able to give your feelings? Do you think it's made you more happy than where you were before?
Yeah, I mean, what's remarkable for me personally about the web was it was a dream. Yes, my circumstance of being ill was one thing, then having a very clear dream was a second. Does it make me happy to have created the web? Absolutely, because I believe that constantly changing the numbers when I was ill was a major factor for me to understand how much energy I had and what I could do well with that and feel good, if you like, about being ill. So it's really, really fundamental to feeling good and having a positive, something positive to hold on to in a dark time. I don't know
And
whether I answered that question at all, by the way. I was just starting to waffle, sorry.
um, could you give a brief background on the industry, sort of how storytelling's been a lot more easier now than it is, say,
Yeah.
like a few years? How has the industry sort of changed, and how has it become easier to tell stories?
Well, stories are ancient things, and so our ancestors communicated what was important about nature, about ecology, about family, about food, basic human things, and out of that has evolved a whole process. And today we find ourselves with technology, and we can all tell our stories on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram in a nanosecond. So I think.
So, can you tell me how sort of the industry of telling stories has changed and how it's become easier to tell stories than it was like a few years ago or like a while back? How do you think it's become easier to tell stories?
Yeah, our ancestors, and we were once indigenous people, very connected to nature, and we would communicate the fundamental importance about survival. That's the basics. Today, it's far more complicated in the sense we have technology, we can access our social media and tell quite trivial stories. You know, I'm eating a panini now, you know, isn't an exciting story, but it can be. I like to think that the stuff I put up on social media tells a story with a question mark with it. You know, it's almost like, is this really my reality at the moment? You know, rather than this is my reality. So I think stories have become more complicated. Film and filmmaking, script writing, that's a slightly different thing. Robert McKee wrote the book Story, and that's a brilliant book that tells you about the structure of story. So I think all stories have to have, you know, certain elements, and he's really grabbed hold of it's not a stutter. He's really grabbed hold of that and clarified it so beautifully. So I think if we're talking about film, then we are talking about moving from reality and depicting reality symbolically, which is almost moving into science fiction. But it's still a story. God, that
Um,
was really loud. God, where did I get that from? Go on.
and do you think there's going to be new projects in the future, so ones that will really stand out, like the web? Really, do you think there'll be really new, interesting ones that will come out?
In terms of innovation, we're at a really interesting place now. So I think just about anything can happen. I think there's always going to be new ideas, but these are, I think, the best ones for me will always be the ones that bring us back to being human, bring us back to being connected to each other, and being connected to the tiny garden we live on, planet Earth. I think taking care of that and ourselves is the biggest story for the next 20 centuries at least, and the subtleties of that, whether that's psychology, social science, whatever, wherever we get that knowledge from, uh, that's the biggest story there is.
And then the last question is, what does storytelling mean to you?
Storytelling for me is a continual surprise. You know, I just keep waking up in the morning. And gosh, got another one. Uh, Half the time, if I'm honest, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to make things happen, but they don't seem to work the way I'd imagined. So everything's a story, and it keeps emerging. The emerging story of my life is, strangely enough, quite fascinating to me. But it sometimes feels like I'm making it up as I go along, and other times it feels like it was meant to be like this. I'm actually following out a blueprint of something I'm here to do, which is different again. It's a kind of combination of those things, and then what happens, the situations I find myself in, the things around me that change how that feels and how I experience it. But you know what? I love life.
And then just lastly, is there anything that you wanted to add? Anything that you wanted to say? Any, I don't know, projects or anything that you wanted to mention in the interview?
Well, I think since getting better, because there's a story we haven't covered. You know, I got an ear infection 12 weeks ago, and I'm better. Chronic fatigue is just gone. Now that's crazy, but in terms of where I'm going next, you know, having been ill for 6.5 years, it's pretty straightforward now. I'm only going to do the things that are really important to me and that sustain my life and my kids and family, and just do the things that really matter. I'm not going to be distracted by things that aren't important. So, up and coming, then we've got Time Talks and Soul Talks. Those are the two projects interviewing world famous people uh, in what they believe and think. If you like, this is about story, isn't it? The story of time and the story of the soul. What is the soul, and how much time we've got left to communicate that? So that's where I'm going next.
Done. That's good.